We come now to a chapter in our study on crafts. Most of the time, crafts aren't considered necessarily a fine art, but it's been argued, and today it has taken its place in the fine arts. Crafts have been around ever since time began. People made pottery, people made clothes, people made baskets, and they decorated them. And as we move around the world, we see different types of crafts, but as utility tools, as spoons, as bowls, as containers of water. But around the world, particularly in the United States and in Europe, we have crafts conventions where people come together. Across the country, people bring their unique crafts to exhibits where people buy them, whether it be bracelets, whether it be baskets. And then in school, most of us, particularly in elementary and secondary school, used to work with crafts. We would weave, or another thing, we learned how to do crochet. We learned how to make things with our hands. And that's the key to understanding crafts as a creative process and a fine art. So when we talk about crafts, we're talking about an activity involving a skill, the creative use of a natural resource and making it by hand. In an art, a trade, or an occupation, it requires a special skill, and crafts fit that bill because you must have unique skills to produce the dolls that you see in this photograph. But then we look back in history and we see that vases were created and one of a kind. This Greek vase here, it took unique skill in order to create this vase and to present these figures on top of the vase as one-of-a-kind objects. Our textbook also points out this dinnerware, which has been created as a one-of-a-kind object. You just don't have factories that turn these out. You have a one-of-a-kind. So if you look in your textbook at figure 14.2, you'll see this set of dinnerware. In Greece, however, and when this was created in 500 BC, that's done during the time of Pericles, the high Greece classical period in Athens. And this piece was, when it was created, just something to carry water in. The merchants and the peasants used to create these, and they were almost cheap. Maybe if we were buying them today, it'd be $5 a piece. However, if you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art or you go to any of the major art museums, you will see the Greek vase prized as depicting the life of the Greek. And of course, these are worth millions of dollars now. But these vases were created in the pottery mills in Athens for 500 BC. Then we see this cup or bowl, this tea bowl. And if you know anything about the China or in Japan and many parts of the world, sometimes it's a bowl like this. That's the key to one's whole livelihood. It's their wash basin. It's their place where they eat rice. It's used in a very important role in one's life. And so it has to be strong, has to be glazed. And they're not too concerned about its beauty and its color as much as its functionality. Then we go to the crafts of today how people can take buttons or can create butterflies out of multiple colored paper, how they can create bowls from buttons, and how, when placed and glued on top of a balloon, we can put together a three-dimensional form that is a piece of sculpture. So there are all types of crafts out there. People who create, as bottom left here, all kinds of characters and doll characters, but they have the personality and they have the unique characteristics of the artist. What do crafts people use? Obviously, the painter uses acrylics and oil, but what people involved in crafts, what do they use? And you can see it in multiple cases. You'll see colored pencils, you'll see scissors, you'll see glues of all types. You'll see realms of sewing material. You will see buttons, you will see brushes, you will see glues, you will see pastels, you will see crayons and markers, all kinds of materials. That's the basis of the crafts person. Many people carve on wax. Many people do wood carvings and take it from a tree, as was the case of the Africans. And then, of course, there's this repetitive craft that has a utility and has been down through the years. Clay. Even the Bible talks about clay, the potter. And the potter is the person who throws the clay in a wheel. We call it the potter's wheel. And that wheel turns around over and over again, and we are able, with our fingers, a unique pressure applied to bring up the walls and to create a vessel that can contain water or any liquid or anything that we want. When we create it in clay, however, you cannot leave it just like that. You have to let it dry, and then the pottery piece is covered with a glaze. And that glaze is like a permanent covering for the piece of clay or pottery. And then it is put into a kiln. Now, kiln is spelled K-I-L-N. It's an oven that bakes that and seals the glaze on top of the clay. And of course, we have something that will last for millions or many, many years. I don't want to say millions of years, but this clay vessel that you see here has been around for a long time, but it was glazed in 500 BC. So as we move forward now, past figure 14.7, we see works that have been created, and this has been placed into a kiln, but it's porcelain. And then it has an underglaze, as we talked about, and that's the blue that was hand painted onto this piece, and it is a masterpiece by itself. This is Judy Chicago's work called The Dinner Party. But look at that plate and look at what we call mixed medium, ceramics, porcelain, textile, being put together to create a beautiful plate, as you see in this illustration. Then we have those crafts people working wood. If you go down to Dutch country, you go down to cabinet makers, people who make one-of-a-kind cabinets, custom cabinets, people who make chairs, different types of chairs, colonial chairs, contemporary chairs. And it's a craft all by itself, woodworking and using the lathe to create designs and even putting up pieces of molding. This is very important for the furniture cabinet maker. And in figure 1423 in your textbook, you will see that there are different types of cabinet makers. Here's one that specializes in nothing but chairs. We have Aunt Billy. This is a very unique piece. See, mother of pearl is a stone mixed with buttons, and they're sewn into this piece here, these bone buttons, and it's creating a beautiful collage. And it was these buttons and the mother of pearl buttons were sewn into the linen to create a collage that you see. Fantastic Maryland Lanphier called Aunt Billy. Here's one where they use a lot of materials, crocheted elements, felt, mesh, fabric, ornaments, polyester, steel cables, all kinds of things to create this hanging over a banister piece. And then we have costume creation that's printed. This is wax printed cotton. And so, in other words, we have the fabric, but then we use wax, and we use colored wax in order to apply color to this particular piece. And we have two very unique costumes. Then going back some 1300 BC, some 3,000 years ago, we talked about Tutankhamun and how his tomb in 1922 was the only one that was found sort of intact by Howard Carter. And this is one of the pieces they found in the tomb, the treasures of Tutankhamun. And we see this beaten gold. And notice how the relief is created. And of course, the artists in Egyptian times were given a status. They were very high status people because they had unique craftsman skills. And in Italy, we have people like Cellini, who gave us this piece, which is gold, and also is mixed with ebony, an ebony base. That's ebony wood. Ebony wood is the most difficult. It's the toughest wood. It's almost impossible to put a nail through ebony wood. And here you see this piece matched and with gold, and it is a one-of-a-kind crafts piece made. In the American community, and in the South particularly, and it's not necessarily the African American community, as people who maybe didn't have so much money to go out and buy blankets for their bedding, and blankets can be very costly. So they would take old clothing and keep that clothing and keep the similarity of certain pieces of material and weave together something we call quilt folk art. And as you can see, one right after the other, we have quilts here. Not necessarily today used to place on top of bedding, but I've been in homes, and it's very, very prevalent in the South particularly, where people have these colorful quilts, not hanging on walls, but covering the bed, taking the place of a bedspread, handmade, hand-woven, put together by pieces of material that have been preserved rather than throwing them away. One artist who has made herself very prominent is Faith Ringo, who does these quilts and focuses in on the African American experience. So she creates, look at this one, with about 9 different scenes and parts of the African American life, from birth to wedding, to family, to regeneration, to church. And of course, as you follow this along, it's quite a story. You don't want to put this on the bed. You want to put this on the wall as a piece of expressive art. There are clubs, there are organizations who specialize in nothing but crafts. They bring their crafts, and particularly quilts, to conventions to be looked at and admired. and most of all purchased. So you don't have multiple copies. These are people who weave, who use their time to weave baskets and come up with unique skills in weaving. Look at this basket weaver here as she starts out, and then on the left you see she's done several pieces because she's developed that unique skill. And look at the piece at the bottom left. It's almost a piece of abstract sculpture, but it's a fantastic kind of craft that only she could create. Susan Ewing's work here, the inner circuit teapot, was created in silver, and the painting was put on the teapot after it was created. We have this piece here, this cedar cabinet, and notice how it's been carved and it's been painted into a uniqueness of its own. And this is in the Seattle Art Museum. This is figure 1438. You need to look at it in our textbook. And last but not least, we have crochet. And many times sweaters and other kinds of clothing are crocheted. Blankets, coverings, capes, all kinds of things used as a craft, and it represents one's individuality. So in the South, when someone gives you, a quilt, or they give you a woven blanket, I mean, that's a one-of-a-kind object that is to be cherished, not only as a craft, but as a unique work of art. So we looked at crafts, and I want you to look at that chapter on crafts as a fine art.